Hey, we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about leadership. And we're going to continue to touch on this as we go about this next couple days. But we kind of want to open the conversation a little bit because leadership is so key in what we do. It seems obvious when we say we're worship leaders. But a lot falls under that banner of worship leader or worship leadership team, worship team, those kind of words. So I just want to kind of open the conversation a little bit and give some thoughts. And this is kind of one of the things this is kind of what I do. I told Owen after he did his talk on our process for leading people in worship. It's hard for me to do that. I've done that talk. He's done that talk, and we're continually, consistently teaching our worship leaders that. But it's hard for me to do that talk in under 60 minutes. You know, I think he did it in like 24 or something like that. I'm not gonna like break everything down quite so quickly. My brain doesn't work that way. So what I want to do is just kind of tell you some things that I've noticed about leadership, and then we'll continue the conversation as we go along. So this is definitely not going to be my book on worship leadership or the concept of leading people by directing. This isn't going to be all my thoughts, but there are some thoughts. And I want us to really engage here, do whatever work it takes for you to be engaged, because this is one of the critical pieces of what we do at our church. And we've always been about this business of raising up worship leaders and investing in worship leaders. But some of what I was talking about earlier when I said our existing strategies for leading our church in worship, we've just outgrown them, and we need different ways of different strategy for leading our people. A lot of it is centers in on this concept of raising up people who lead worship. So we distinguish in the concept of team. We're all together leading together, but we kind of distinguish between the front line and the back line. The front line for us are worship leaders who are given the responsibility and the privilege of taking the people somewhere and leading, and the rest of the band is on that team, and they're critical, but we don't give them responsibility of directing. Okay, so that's a difference for us, and investing in these worship leaders and investing in ourselves as leaders is really critical to what we do, and whether it's going to continue, whether it's going to flourish. So we want to talk about that a little bit. I personally have had the opportunity to lead in some big arenas with big crowds that have come with a lot of expectation, and that is a unique experience for sure. I've had the opportunity to lead in small groups with men and women of God who are considered revered in our Christian faith, especially here in America. People who have such deep and rich history with God that I'm leading going, I don't think I need to lead these people. You know, they're way ahead of me in God. I've led in homes with persecuted Christians who live under radical religious regimes. And these have all been powerful times of worship. Even as you hear me describe them, you're probably feeling those different dynamics. All very powerful, all very different. And one of the main ways, interestingly, in this day and time, one of the main ways we learn about worship leading and about worship music in general and worship teams is through YouTube. Honestly, that whether you think of it as your resource or not, YouTube, videos, DVDs is one of the main influencers to how we perceive the way worship is led, should be led in our day and time. It is a great thing because we use it all the time to indicate positives of what we're looking for and what we're going for. At the same time, it is also not a great thing. Because what they don't and can't put on the front end of every YouTube video that you watch is, remember, this isn't your people that you're leading on a week-to-week basis. And so it is something that you're peering in on, and you're seeing some dynamic experience. And internally, there's probably something going on that says, man, I want to do that too. But it's hard to then transition to waking up early in the morning and on Sunday and leading your people and not getting frustrated that it doesn't ever turn into that same thing that we were experiencing watching YouTube. And so it's important to understand, I think, for leaders that we need to internalize this, that good leaders are aware of their people and they take them to a greater place. So we don't just go to a greater place. We're aware of our people and we take them to a greater place. That's what good leaders do. Now, effectively, the person who is standing in front is the leader. Whether they're doing a terrible job or an incredible job, they are directing, influencing, leading. So I'm not just going to be talking about people who are up in front. I'm talking about good leaders, the kind of leaders we want to be, the kind of leaders we want to raise up. And I just want to talk about a few values, a few things we're looking for. And we've kind of gone back and forth on this a little bit as we've looked for worship leaders, as we've auditioned people, as we've heard singers and said, hey, let's give this a shot with you doing this or doing that. And I'm just going to kind of break it down and get past all that. We can come back and talk about some of those processes and even through the years how we've navigated those conversations or decisions that we've made and changed to now. But for where we're at right now, this is what I want to get through to us. It's that you can be limited in your musicianship or your singing. And if you're a good leader, we want you serving our people. That is what doesn't happen on YouTube, right? So what I'm saying in my church is you could be limited in your knowledge of music and your ability to communicate the language of music. You could even be limited in your singing. But if you are a dynamic leader that is able to grab a room of people and take them somewhere, I want you on my team. And conversely, you can be an excellent musician or singer, but if you don't know how to take a group of people and direct them somewhere, you won't get asked to serve on our stage. You would have a long time ago, just because you could sing nice. But honestly, I kind of liken that to a ficus tree these days. Kind of the greenery in the back, that's over here, and it looks really good. But if you're not leading my people, if you're not helping the team lead, you're just singing like this, and it's awesome. It's Celine Dion behind the curtain, then it's really not helpful to me. And I don't want those kind of people on my stage. I want to teach them how to lead and see if they can find a leader inside. But if they're just here to be a backup singer, I don't need those. At different times in our history, we might have utilized those, and you might find yourself there. I'm not knocking anything. I'm just kind of from the gut telling you what I'm looking for in leaders. Obviously, what we want is people who are both great leaders and excellent musicians and excellent singers. We come across those people for sure. They have their weaknesses also, and we run into those. But at the same time, when those two worlds meet, it's a beautiful thing. In the meantime, and as we're growing, and as we're collecting people and envisioning people and bringing people in and investing in them, I am looking for people who intrinsically have a gift for directing people to a certain preferred end, right? That is leadership. A musician or a singer may not know how to communicate how a song is supposed to go. They may not understand the Nashville number system. You might try and try and try, and they just still don't get it, you know. To you, if you are in a place of understanding those things, even though that person is a good leader, it can be frustrating. But it's better for us to kind of back up from that and look at this, not lose the forest for the trees here, you know. Look at it from the 30,000 foot view and realize that those who are able to direct people are the ones that you want to be leading people. You just want to have the conversations with them about where you're directing them. We do want to have conversations about how we can live with understanding, how we can do the work that we need to do to be able to lead the people on the stage as well as lead the people out there. Because leadership is characterized by movement. That's the thing. Leaders move and people follow. Sometimes that can be a problem if someone's a leader and an influencer in your group, and they might even have more sway than you just because of the natural gift that God's given them, and maybe they're not so awesome. You know, there's a young person on your team, they've got too much energy, and if they say, "Isn't this cool?" everybody goes, "Yeah," you know, and you're like, "Hey guys, is it cool?" And they're like, "No, but I don't know what you're talking about." But I'm the leader, I'm the worship pastor, you know. I have this all the time. I have people who are dynamic in their leadership gifting, and I invest in those people when I see the anointing on their life. And at times I've been frustrated with their inability to see how they're negatively affecting the team, or they're just taking them to a place that I'm not trying to lead. I'm like, "Hey, let's all go here. Let's focus. Let's kind of get down there, trying to have a party over here." But I would rather take the time to say, "Hey, I want you on my team because you're going to dynamically influence people. I just need you to do it with me and not apart from me." And I'm just trying to get through to us that it is worth it to have those conversations. So I'm going to rat out some of our people here a little bit, and hopefully encourage them as well. But I remember there's a buddy of mine. You guys may have met Linnell Perry. You may know who that is. Most people think of him as Robert Griffin, who used to lead worship at Antioch Community Church. And before that, Antioch Norman. But he, black guy, dreads? Yep, dreads. So I was like, "Is that what that's called?" Yes. I remember him being on our stage. He came to us and admitted, "I'm not the best singer. My range is like from here to here, you know, and it's down here." That's just, he admitted it. He's like, "Also, my guitar playing's okay. I need to grow in it." And we would play and sing together and say, "You are correct on both of those statements. That's what needs to happen." So we started playing guitar together and practicing. But I remember one time having him on our stage, and we were playing this song "So Good to Me." You guys remember that one? Was it Corey Asbury and those guys? So we were playing a song. He's supposed to lead it. And the transition between the song that we just done and that song completely fell apart. It's like the band went to silence, and they didn't fade out. It was just like, I'm not even sure what happened. It's just kind of one of those moments of, you know, what's going on right now? And I think my guitar was even off at the time or something. And so it's like, as a leader, I'm like, I want to run back, turn it off, and be like, it's okay, we'll keep going, you know, that kind of a thing. So I step back and I look back at Owen, and all of a sudden we hear Linnell's voice, and he says, "Hey, people of God," and he just took the room somewhere. He goes, "Hey, people of God, let's lift up our voice if we know God's been good." So no one told him to do that. I had never had a coaching moment with him to do that. Me and Owen looked at each other with the greatest sigh of relief at that moment. It was like, thank you for taking the people somewhere, for stepping into the void, because that's what leaders do. So Linnell is not the most vivacious person. He's not an extremely gregarious personality, but he felt that moment was going to be awkward. And for the betterment of the people, instead of it being a distracting moment, he just kind of took them away from it, you know? A lot of times when a baby is taken away from its mother, it starts to cry. But if you can get the baby to just kind of like, look over here at the pretty pink sparkly thing, you know, everything's okay, right? So I don't want to act like our people are just babies, but to be honest, just whatever's distracting them from going straight into the presence of God, just get them away from that, you know, take them somewhere. So when I saw that, we encouraged that big time. And we kept putting Linnell on our stage, and we kept dropping all of our songs. 1, 2, 3 keys down, you know, so that Linnell can sing. We did it over and over again. And at one point, he sang the song with us by Hillsong like every single Sunday because for some reason it worked for him. And it worked in our key system of where we were flowing. And I was like, I'm sorry, Linnell, I know you know other songs, bro, but you kill this one and we just need to sing it again. And so he would go for it. But the thing about Linnell is he steps into those moments. And I wanted him on my stage. There were people who were not on our stage who were tons better than him in both of those regards. But he filled the void. He felt it himself and he filled the void. When you see that, invest in those people. That's the kind of people you want to have on your team. We could use Claire Berlinski Woods, she's married now, as an example for so many things. Most of them would be very funny and hysterical. She is a brunette that has sung with us for a while. She lives in Fort Worth now. She's kind of a power vocalist, has led on the front line of World Mandate. I'm trying to describe her to you in case you don't know who she is. And from the moment that Claire stepped on our stage, she has been trying to learn how to communicate about music. She's a good singer. She's a natural singer. She has really worked to try to get the Nashville number system and try to communicate chords and even learn an instrument. And the reason for her wanting to do that is to be able to communicate with the rest of the band because she does lead, you know. And so we have story after story after story of her taking a moment and saying, let's all do this. And the rest of the band going, we didn't understand anything that you just said, you know. The classic is Claire going, and then just singing. And we're like, what? We all have like some hand motions that we do that we know, and you know what they are. Why didn't you use any of them, you know? But what you did do that thing, whatever that was, you know? And so a lot of times she would leave, and the band would just look at each other, and, you know, and then she'd go somewhere, and we'd finally catch up with her, and it was a beautiful thing. She lives really loud, you know. She's just a loud personality. She is a passionate person. And she would be too much to handle for me a long time ago. You know, I'd say 5, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, it would have been a little bit too much for me to handle because the inexperience and the seeming inability to narrow her thoughts into the musicality that we were operating in would have just been like, I just don't know if this is worth it. If I hadn't had my leadership antenna up to say, when she steps into one of those moments, it's different, and it makes a difference. I really want to encourage you to be looking for those people and to take risks with them. But here's the thing, have the conversations with them that you need to have. Invest in them, spend time with them, but look for the leadership. And if somebody is so quiet and so scared that they can't think of anything except for playing keyboard in the monitor room to the side, off stage, then that's maybe an indication that they're not quite ready yet to be leading on our stage. Now, if you know me, I don't mind communicating to a group of people, but I am an introverted person. I'm not really ever the center of a party. I'm just not that person. That's Owen. He is that person. You know? But I know how to lead, and I know that when I'm worshiping and leading worship, I am doing the things that I'm saying I'm doing, and I'm a passionate person, and I have my way of doing that. Matt Redman is not the most bouncing around worship leader, but when he sings celebration songs, he has his way of celebrating, right? It's very different than Jonathan Douglas with Hillsong United, long-haired guy who just jumps up and does the splits all over the stage. He's kind of the definition of celebration, right? But he has his way, Redman has his way, but you feel it when they lead, right? So I'm just encouraging us here to be looking for that. Leaders don't merely ask people to follow them, they are compelling. So, by the way, if you look up compel in the dictionary, to compel someone to do something is to force them to. Interestingly, in the dictionary, to be compelling is to be powerfully irresistible. I don't know why those two are so drastically different in attitude. So I don't actually want to compel you to do anything. I want to be compelling. I want to be a leader that when I do something, you feel that is so powerfully irresistible that you must join in with me, right? This is a process. It's a growth and it's a spectrum for you, given your personality, your giftings. But if you're worship leaders, this is something that you want to be continually growing in, and as you're growing, meaning as you're not yet there, as you're not yet perfect and not yet to your goal, pulling people along with you. And so while you're doing that, I want to encourage you to be what to be looking for. This may sound really simple, but good leaders tell the people what they want them to do. Number one. Number two, they model what they want the people to do. And three, they celebrate when the people do it. They tell them what they want them to do, they model what they want them to do, and they celebrate when the people do it. That's what good leaders do. The most natural leaders, naturally gifted leaders that I've ever seen or witnessed do these things like intrinsically. It's just a matter of course, that's what has to happen. Some of us need to be reminded. Some of us need to be told, oh yeah, that's when I've done that before and that worked, and then sometimes I don't do it, that doesn't work. What does work is telling them out loud. There's kind of this thing that happens often when I'm talking with worship leaders, and it has happened often talking to life group worship leaders and leaders of smaller churches, and they'll say, you know, it's awesome when you come to World Mandate and you guys are playing a song. We had this joke that for some reason Owen wrote a song called "To You Be the Glory" that was on our It Is Finished album. And we love it, recorded it, had a great time. We get to World Mandate, and every time the intro to the song came on, the whole crowd started doing a fast clap through it like this. And we were really surprised by it, you know? And so the intro would come on, and clap, 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 clap. And we're about to go to "You Be the Glory Forever." You know, I'm like, why are we fast clapping right now? Like double time clap. I don't understand. But for some reason, the rhythm or whatever, somebody started it, and that's what happened. And so you come to World Mandate, and not only do you have the problem of people not clapping or not joining in that way, but people are jumping in when you're not wanting them to. And so that's a great problem to have. People are being overly expressive and overly involved in your musical expression. But that's not normally the problem we have. The problem we have is, how do we get them to engage with their bodies, with their whole being? And so just the simple thing of having them clap. Like, how do you get people to clap? Especially white people. How do you get white people to clap, for crying out loud? You know? So I get asked this, and the thing is, I remember the first time it was asked of me, and I almost felt bad saying this, but people, you know, this lady in this one group said, so how do you get people to do that? And I go, I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm making fun of you, so I'm just going to say it and trust that you know I don't mean that. But I say, let's all clap now. And then I start clapping. That is the deep science beneath how I make that happen, because good leaders tell the people what to do, and then they model it, and then they celebrate it when they do it right. So you don't. I have good friends down the road at the Greater New Light Missionary Baptist Church, and just I sang that phrase, you know that those people in that church are black, and I don't have to tell them how to clap. I have to sing loud enough in my microphone to cover their voices. It's a different experience there. But in our church, in our services, Sunday by Sunday, when we are communicating celebration, it's not rare to see all three of the frontline leaders with their hands in the air doing this. Some of that is just saying clap, and most of it's saying, this is where the rhythm is. For the love of God, please stay here, right? It's funny to me when people copy or cover other songs that have a person who yells out, "Everybody dance now," and then everybody just kind of does like this, you know? I do not allow this. I mean, I'm not the best dancer, but if we're going to say everybody dance now, we at least, if you don't have an instrument that's going to go flying out of your hands, if you do start to move, we need to start moving. And that is not the strength of every one of our worship leaders, right? It's really not. And so it's not rare. It also happens. I remember hearing, and this only happened like 6 weeks ago. We've been talking with one of our worship leaders who has this powerful voice, and I think internally really wants to express all of that. And maybe, you know how sometimes you feel like you're really going for it and you see a video of yourself and you're just doing this, but you feel like, so we're trying to kind of get her outside of herself a little bit. And we talked about it. She was super into it, want to and everything. But right before we walked on stage, I remember Owen turned around and saying, hey, and he called her name and she goes, hey, throw a party out there. Because if you don't throw a party, they won't have one. And she walked out, she's like, okay, kind of like, oh boy, here we go. Like I'm gonna step out and do something I'm not used to doing. I might do it out there, but to do it up here feels awkward. Because then they're gonna see me and I'll feel weird about it. And we push through that. We have those conversations. And we super encourage those people. Like when you were going for it, I really felt that this time you were really going for it. You were expressing that because we want to be compelling. Again, we have those conversations to bring them into that place. I'll just say this lastly. Leaders understand that if most of the people move in one direction, the rest are likely to follow. So, therefore, leaders lead the majority as we lead the passionate few. Probably in your service where you lead, you know where the people sit that are going to worship no matter what, right? I actually know in every service where that's going to be. In the service where the youth come, they're going to be right here most of the time. And if the few leaders there will focus and go for it, the rest of that whole group will. If those people sit down, that whole group will sit down. Over here in my services, there's a lady named Donna. Donna is a unique person. Donna's been through a lot. She's been homeless a lot of her life, and she is had a lot of brokenness in her life. And Jesus has rescued her and saved her. She's really awkward. I mean, super awkward. She's that person in our church. Jimmy actually used her life as an example at one point to say, when Jesus sets you free, you really, at some level, stop caring about what everybody else thinks. And so you'll see her celebrate, and he even said, and we could all learn a few things from the celebration of her life, because you don't know how much God set her free. That being said, it's a little funky to watch what happens when we start worshiping. Her dance moves are not conventional. And they're all over the place. And would maybe be even considered suggestive if her body were shaped in a different way. I'm just being real here, y'all. Okay? But I don't have to do a lot to lead Donna in worship. I just don't. I don't have to do a lot to lead these people in worship over here. And I know where those people sit. But I have a tendency at times, especially if I want to be lazy, to just kind of inwardly point to right here and let's just have a worship time, because the rest of you, I don't really want to put forth the energy to do it today. And I have to overcome that. And I'm thinking I'm not alone there. But you have to remember, leaders know that if I can move most of these people in one direction, then the rest are likely to follow, or at least maybe have the opportunity to have an experience like they've never had before. And so we lead the majority. We don't lead just the passionate few. Because if I was just leading the passionate few, I could go anywhere at any time and leave most of the room behind. And so that's something I'm looking for, and that's part of what the conversations we have with our leaders as well. I want to invite Owen to come up here because Owen runs our back line and actually is training up people who also run the back line. But to be honest with you, he's one of our best worship leaders, one of our most experienced worship leaders. And so though he is talking a lot about music directing, band leading and stuff like that, I wanted to have him come up and talk. And I mean, you're welcome to share whatever you want to, but I'm not thinking this from the backline perspective. He really is one of our best worship leaders. And for me, because he's in the back and running the band, the reason I feel so connected to the band and the worship experience that I'm leading is because I know that he's got a gift and an experience for leading the people, so we're on the same page a lot. I'm not having to try to communicate to him, yeah, I know I said that, but right now I'm trying to do this. Like, he understands how that goes. And so I wanted him to come and speak just for a little bit, and then maybe we'll take some time to kind of discuss this together. So, go for it, bro.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. I think you covered a lot of what I was going to say, so you rule.
I'm pretty cool that way.
So cool. I think one of the things that we are feeling that I think we're discovering here as we're really trying to develop our leaders and develop people here is that when people think, how am I doing in my leadership? People, or I'll ask people like, how'd it go? How'd you do? And people will always tell me like, oh, I was a little pitchy, or I missed a note, or I sounded great. It's always comments on the musicality side of it. But I very rarely hear about them telling me about their leadership was good or was bad. And so one of the things that I'm really trying to instill in our leaders here is how did you lead just now? Did you take people somewhere? Did people feel like that you led them to a certain place? And so I'm really working. We just started this thing where we have live worship for our elementary school services, which is really funny. And here's the 4th through 6th grade service. It's called The Quest, which is why that's back there in case you're wondering. And so we literally have 3 people on here jumping around with handhelds singing. And it is a funny thing to watch, in case you want to see something funny. But they're these young worship leaders. They've never led before, most of them. And so what I'm trying to get them to see is we're leading the song. Let's say we're singing the song Alive. So it's like, we are alive, and as we're jumping around, nothing can take your place, your need. Your love has set us free, whoa. And there's 30-second time span where there's just nothing but music going on. Now, if you've ever tried to lead elementary school students in worship, I'm going to tell you what they're not going to do, and that is worship for those 30 seconds. Most of them are going to be like, punching the kid next to them. And so I'm trying to, literally, y'all. I'm like, okay, get the finger out of the nose, and let's oh yeah, Jesus, And so what I'm trying to teach these worship leaders to do is to help coach them in those moments. Something that's a little more applicable to us. We had our young adult service last month, which you guys are going to get to go to tomorrow night. It's super fun. It's downtown in a theater. It's got a great vibe. So I had a younger girl leading with me, and we're singing the song Ever Be. And we get to the end of Ever Be, we sing the big chorus, and then on the record, they've got that long instrumental, and then what we generally do, on the record, it's like, ga, 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 and it just kind of ends. Normally, we go back into a drop chorus at the end. But there's that, easily minute to minute and a half instrumental there. And we play through the song, and I tell her, I say, hey, so-and-so, I asked her, what are you going to do in that moment when we get there? Because people aren't going to know what to do. Even though we've done the song a million times and people know the lyrics, for some reason in those moments, people get stuck. And they're just like, okay, I don't have a tambourine or something, so I'm not playing an instrument, so I'm just kind of sitting here. And the super worshipers are going to worship. The people that we don't have to lead, they're just going to lead. They're going to sing and they're going to go for it. But afterwards, so she didn't do anything in the moment, and it was a fail. And yeah, it was. And so I was like, what? The question that I asked was, what did those people need in that moment? They needed someone to either say, sing your own song, or they needed someone to just sing on the mic something spontaneous. She just kind of stepped back and just just did the little sway and looked fine, but she didn't lead the people into that moment where it's like, man, they could have had that moment where they're singing their own praise. They're singing their own, the lyrics are, your praise will ever be on my lips. And then there's this 60-second moment where it's like, now's your time. This is where you get to do it. And so I'm trying to teach her, hey, in that moment, because everybody I don't know. There are two camps of people. They're the people who are like, please stop talking. You talk between like every word. Like, chill out a little bit. But most people feel that moment, but they just don't know what to say or they don't know what to do, and they're scared to step in and say, sing out your own song, or let's lift our voices to Jesus, or let's lift our hands together. And so most people feel, we feel those moments of like, oh, I know something should happen, but I hate talking in front of people. And so I'm just going to kind of hope people go for it. And that is basically saying, like, I'm just going to set them up to fail. Because they're again, the super worshipers are going to, but we're looking at how are we bringing everybody into this thing together. And so something that I'm looking at to try to coach, I think that we're trying to grow in here a lot is how are we helping our congregation through these things? So I was leading in the high school service probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it's high school, so it's high school. We'll leave it at that. So we're leading some song. I don't remember what it is, and we get to this like big soaring bridge or big chorus or something, and I'm like, everyone lift your voice. And I watch like 5 people just sing, and everyone just like stare at me. I'm like, okay, what happened? So it's really funny. So this happens a lot where I'll be in here and I'll see like one of the kids services and they'll be like, everyone dance. And then like one kid dances and no one else does. I was debriefing afterwards and I was like, hey, what happened? Like, did you notice? She was like, I know, I said everybody dance and nobody did. And so I was like, what do you do differently? And she was like, just hope they do. Like, no, probably not. So what I did was I took her back to this youth service, and I was like, okay, so I said, everybody sing it out. And I look out, and 5 people are singing with me. So literally, y'all, I'm not joking, 4, maybe 5 times, I say some variation of everyone sing. So it was like, front to the back, every voice, open your mouth. Like, you with the green shirt, like any variation that I can. But the thing is by the 5th time, finally people were with me. And I think people are afraid. I feel so dumb in that moment, y'all. I feel so stupid that I'm like, I've said this 5 times, like, everyone sing. You're all supposed to be singing, like, and like, come on, help me out here. I'm not that lame. But the thing is that finally by the 5th time, the kid, the 16-year-old was like, I'm gonna sing, what the heck, and it was like, yes, we got to that moment, but it takes overcoaching sometimes that for people to finally land and feel like, okay, I'm in. So just want to encourage you, I don't know if any of you have ever done theater before, but a lot of times something that they say is that you're communicating to the back row. You're not communicating to the person in the front. So your expressions, your facials, your body language has to communicate to the person sitting way back there, not to your mom in the front row. So in the same way, it's that place with leadership where we're saying, we're not trying to say, like, everyone lift your voice, and the 5 people who are going to do it, whether you tell them to or not, are like, yes, And so we have to, at times, go past the point that feels natural or feels comfortable to finally grab people in. Somebody who does this really well, and I actually kind of picked this up from him, is Chris Kilala does this a lot. If you listen to his albums, which is interesting because they started leading for youth groups, so maybe that's tie-in, I don't know. But if you listen to their early records, he'll say like 4 or 5 times, from the front to the back, every voice, everyone singing it out. And it takes those multiple coaching times for finally everyone to engage. And so just want to encourage you, even as you're feeling like, my congregation is so dead, or like, how do I engage people? How do I call people to do something? And Adam, this kind of goes back to what you were asking earlier, I might be leading the same set, but one time in one service, I can say, let's all lift our hands. And it's like, everyone's there with me. And it's like, then another service is like, let's all lift my hands.
Yep.
Lift them, come on. So let's all lift our hands, and nobody does. And so I'll be like, everybody, let's lift our hands together to Jesus. Let's lift him up and surrender. And I'll say it a couple times, hoping someone else is going to start singing the melody so that we can all get into doing it together. You feel really awkward and stupid at the time, but it gets people there and it gets people engaged. And so that's a tool that I use a lot. If I'm feeling like, man, these people just aren't connecting with me, these people aren't going there, is I will say over and over, and literally there will be songs that I coach first chorus, second chorus, bridge, third chorus, that it's like, why am I still having to say, let's sing this together, or let's declare this out loud, or, but it takes going past what we feel comfortable doing. So just want to encourage you, if you're feeling stuck with your congregation, if you're feeling like, man, I just don't know how to get people with me, to just call people to it over and over, and eventually people's hearts will come with you. People will open up to it, but it just takes you pushing, honestly, a little more to say, step outside of what you're feeling. That's really what we're saying. Step outside of what you want to do right now. Step outside of that and step into God is good and God is real. Going back to that place of building a set, that what we're trying to do is create faith in the room. And so it's our job as leaders, and what we're really trying to coach our people to do is to say, if I'm leading and I've got X worship leader with me, to say, hey, I want you to step into that moment. If you're leading this song, it's you. It's not me. I'm not going to be the one to step in and say, like, let's all lift our hands. And like keep singing what you're singing. My mic probably isn't even in the house that loud as, X leader is leading with me. And so I'm really trying to help people learn. Don't think like, oh, how'd I do? Yeah, I sounded pretty good. I got a couple runs in there, so it's great, But to say, like, are you taking people somewhere? Are you leading people? Did you leave and people feel like, that girl, I had to follow her? You know what I mean? I was compelled. I love what you were saying. I was so like, oh, I have to go where she's going because I want to be, And so, I think part of it is, let's not give our congregation the option. If that's another way of saying it, I'm going to keep saying this until you do it a little bit in a very loving way. But press people to step outside, because that's the thing. If they stop and think about it, they want to worship God. Some people are going to walk in and say, I don't worship God. And I don't know why they show up, but awesome, praise the Lord. But most people want to worship, but they're just so stuck in current feelings, current circumstances, the concerns of the world, and it's our job to look out with compassion and help them get outside of that and lead them into that. So,
so good. I think another couple things is that we talk about building a worship culture. Another way to think of it is you are building a worship culture one way or another. In the same way that I remember hearing a man say, you're worshiping something or someone. The point is just to find out who that is and direct it towards God. In the same way, we're building a worship culture. So if you're wanting to have there be these frequent moments of spontaneous collaboration in the room where we're all jumping in together because we're all sensing the Spirit of God's here, and it's a spirit of joy, or we all want to get on our knees. If you're wanting those things to happen, not just because that's cool, but because you know what kind of connection with God happens in those moments, then you have to coach for these moments, A good example of this is my brother Stephen and I had the opportunity to visit Hillsong for the Hillsong Conference 2011. So Hillsong Conference is like all of anybody who's been a part of Hillsong comes back home if they hadn't been home. And everybody's there, and it is an incredible blowout. Has anyone ever been to Australia to a Hillsong conference? So when I was there in 2011, they had two huge arenas that were kind of near each other, that they were pretty much full, and they had different bracelets. You had a bracelet on, and you would go to one or you go to the other, depending on the color of your bracelet. and you didn't know who was going to be leading worship, and you didn't know who was going to be speaking, and it was different in each one. But if we were here in the All Phones Arena and they had Hillsong United and Jenison Franklin speaking here, then on the other one it's Darlene Check, Reuben Morgan, and Israel Houghton, and Brian Houston is speaking. So nobody's losing here, but everybody is just full tilt, and this is all people who came and paid a lot of money to stand in this room, and so we came expectant to receive something, and not hard to lead worship for this crowd. And then that's where they make a DVD, right? That's when I make a DVD, So then we were there earlier. My brother and I got to stay a little longer, be there before and after. So we were there on the Sunday at what they called their city campus. And it was a great time. It really was. And then the following Sunday, we went to the Hills campus, which is their main campus. And in this service, there was a little bit kind of like afterglow from conference, so there's still some people around, but JD led worship, and it was just literally at one point had everybody on the floor doing the motions to this song that I'd never even heard of or seen. And so everybody's kicking their legs up in the air and all this stuff. Literally, everybody's on the ground. So that's great. And then he allows the guy, he has his this guy that he's mentoring to step up and lead a song. And it was a song that most people knew, I think. And he went for it and he gave it his all. He wasn't as good as everybody else I'd just seen. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of feel the difference. So this whole group is a good group. But they were doing what we're talking about. They're giving this guy an opportunity to lead in a moment where he could kind of get a win, But it just wasn't the same as when JD led. Because JD has like 20-something years of experience, He's been leading since he was like 7, And so, of course it's not the same, And JD doesn't have to have this amazing singing voice. He's just like leadership embodied, And we actually got to talk with him a little bit. And as he's talking, I'm thinking this guy is either on drugs, or he's just like really great at being excited. That's about all, And I'm talking to him,
he's not on drugs.
He's not on drugs, by the way. He says no to drugs. But when I'm talking with him, this guy gets leading his church. He's actually the worship pastor for the main campus. And the way that they run their rotation is very different. But I just sense this leadership gifting, and he's giving this guy an opportunity to go for it. And I just wanted to say, that's not when they made the DVD. That's not when they did that. And so when we watch Jesus Culture, Chris McClarney, when he leads, it's like whenever Chris leads, it's like he really could sing Mary Had a Little Lamb, She really did have a lamb. What? Yeah, exactly. Anything Chris, and really, I know some people who've played with him, and somebody who's going to soon. Watch out. He does tour with the Tour Waltz, by the way, and coming up, Chris McClarney, he's going to get embarrassed. Anyway, he's going to play with Chris McClarney. It's pretty cool. So Chris hasn't done a ton of, he's kind of ADD, and he doesn't do a lot of preparation, and it seems like whatever he's got going on is not a plan, that's for sure. And then he steps up, and you're like, this is going to fall apart, and then the glory hits. So good for Chris, right? That's wonderful for him. That's awesome. So make a DVD. But that's just not the way it works out for most of us, right? And so that's what I want to say is that's what we're seeing on YouTube is something like that. Or we're watching the highlights of somebody. And it is good for us to recognize that we are in process of building a culture where that happens. So I love it when I step back from the mic and the crowd takes over. But there was a lot of times I step back and sing it out. And I'm back in because y'all didn't, So I am building that culture. We're building that culture. So if I'm not doing that, sometimes I get him.
It's the dance move.
Yeah. If I'm not stretching out and saying, sing it out, and directing that way, and everybody let's dance. Now, I will say, if I say everybody dance, and I look over and the people to the side of me are doing this, and I'm jumping around and going crazy, we're having a talk afterwards. Well, let's all do this together. But if we're all going for it and they're not, that is okay. Because the alternative is none of us are doing it. And we're building that's our culture. None of us do it. So let's lead them to do something with their bodies so that their souls can interact, so their souls can engage. Then that's why we do what we do. And I know that some of you are leading and you're thinking right now, this is not going to work. This isn't going to go over really well. Either I don't dance, or we have 3 people who are playing together at the same time, and it's going to be awkward if I say everybody dance now. So don't just jump into the deepest, craziest thing, but do some things that you haven't been doing and figure out, how am I going to lead into that? And the best thing that we'll do is we'll go for it. And there's a couple songs that we want to work, that we want to throw a party, and they just don't. And I will just say, we're going to do it one more time. And my leaders will go, it's not working, man. I mean, they're just not going to do it. I'll be really vulnerable with you. Our Sunday morning services, we stopped doing the song Alive because people just don't respond to it. In the college services, they probably could just do it every week and everybody just have a party. That's great. The thing is, they will respond to other songs, but for some reason that one just, maybe it was a little over the top, or maybe it...
60-second dance break.
60 seconds dance breaks? I don't know.
Just Donna's.
It's like all, yeah, seriously.
Their scarf. She has a scarf that she always has.
She does.
Just a little, like, shimmy.
I have not seen Owen's imitation of Donna. It was a little more spot on than I was prepared for. So, did you see JD's the other day? We don't make fun of our people. I just want to say that. But it is comical. So, we also understand her heart, so we're good. I talk to her every week. Every week I talk to her. Anyway,
she's amazing.
So, but we just had to have the conversation, and the guys had to say, hey, I know you're trying, and you're going for it. We're going to get there someday. It's not like, it doesn't necessarily have to be an aspiration for that song, but that song's just not cutting it. People aren't engaging. They're just watching you. So they feel left out, you know? Well, we gave it a good run. Like, we would just do it anyway. We're like, well, a bunch of people are dead. We're just going to keep being alive, you know? But we did end up just pulling that one. So it's not like crossed out with a red X forever, but we made a decision not to lead it anymore. And then it's interesting, we'll lead another song and everybody's moving. And I'm like, transfer, you know? Just put that in that song. But I don't know why it doesn't work. But we pay attention to it and we make decisions, you know? So we don't always do everything all the time, but we step out, we lead our people to take the next step so that the culture that we're building is one of expression. And the reason we build a culture of expression, again, goes back to our confessions, that we clap, we dance, we sing, we shout, because that's what free people do. All the way through the Bible. The Red Sea was split. The people walked through. They got on the other side and said, our enemies have been completely destroyed. And immediately, without any indication of leadership, without any kind of prompting, the women began to play instruments, timbrels, and start dancing and started singing a song immediately. And the children began to run around because they were people who were prisoners who had been set free. So God has put it in our DNA to be that way. We're just in unlocking it for them. We have to be unlocked ourselves first and take some steps to do it in front of people. So we're learning this in front of people. And that's a place of leadership that we're owning up, we're taking responsibility for.